Welcome, everyone. We are so thrilled to be able to bring to you a very special book presentation featuring Heide Goettner-Abendroth, who is joining us from her home in Germany today. Heide's talk is going to be featuring her most recent book that was translated into English, Matriarchal Societies of the Past and the Rise of Patriarchy. Today's salon is hosted by Genevieve Vaughan and the International Feminists for a Gift Economy. I'm Letecia Layson, your moderator. Dr. Heide Goettner-Abendroth is a mother, grandmother, and the founding mother of modern matriarchal studies. She has twice been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. She earned her PhD in philosophy of science at the University of Munich, where she lectured for 10 years. In 1986, she founded the International Academy Hagia for Matriarchal Studies in Germany, and since then has been its director. She also guided 3 world congresses in matriarchal studies. In 2012, she received the Association of the Study of Women in Mythologies Saga Award for contributions to women's history and culture. Heide has published on philosophy of science and extensively on matriarchal society and culture. Her many publications include Dancing Goddess, Principles of Matriarchal Aesthetics, Matriarchal Societies, Studies on Indigenous Culture Across the Globe, and The Goddess and Her Heroes, Matriarchal Religion in Mythology, Fairy Tales, and Poetry. Her latest book, now available in English, Matriarchal Societies of the Past and the Rise of Patriarchy. Please welcome Heide.
Thank you so much, Letecia, and thank you, Genevieve, for inviting me to this salon. It's a great honor to me to present to you all my new book. Letecia just mentioned the title, Matriarchal Societies of the Past and the Rise of Patriarchy in the major cultural regions of West Asia and Europe. This book was translated by Hope Hart, Simone Plaza, and Tracy Byrne. But first, let me talk about the aim of my book. Historiography tends to focus on war. It is concerned about domination, about emperors, kings, and other potentates, and the expansion of power. As such, it is male history, also not the history of all men. Women do not form part of this history, aside from a few individual exceptions which do not alter the patriarchal narrative. Women and their achievements have been treated as marginal or non-existent by conventional archaeology too, just as if women's practical inventions and the social and cultural patterns they created have never existed. The aim of my book is to help redress this bias by using an integrating approach to rewrite and rebalance human cultural history. This provides a new perception, for it is not simply about the early history of women or the feminine, not just about women and men, but rather the history of a very different form of society, matriarchal society, with its social, economic, and political institutions and its different worldview. In this kind of society, women and men, as well as the generations, lived together in an egalitarian way, which is very different from what we are used to today. In recent archaeology, findings from anthropology are sometimes included to better understand early historical patterns. However, the choice is random and arbitrary. so that patriarchalized indigenous societies are also used to help explain phenomena which nevertheless cannot be understood in this way. In my book, I develop and reveal the cultural history of the matriarchal form of society. Consequently, as comparative examples, I have only used those existing indigenous societies which are matriarchal and which I have researched for many years. Such a background leads to quite a different interpretation for many archaeological finds and results than previously reached. But it is precisely these archaeological finds and data, of which many new are included, that provides a solid basis on which matriarchal cultural history can be reclaimed. The emergence of patriarchal patterns is also explained, not through theoretical speculation, but based on archaeological finds. This also can only be well understood through a deep knowledge about matriarchal societies, in order not to get trapped again in explanations from the patriarchal perspective. Additionally, one must keep in mind that the origins and development of patriarchy differ widely in the various cultural zones of the world. So there is no simple universal explanation. Therefore, this book looks at the emergence of patriarchal patterns in the major cultural areas of West Asia and Europe, showing how extremely different the conditions for establishing them have been. However, as these patterns evolved, it becomes evident that they are by no means natural, but rather historical, and can therefore be overcome. Now I would like to give you a short summary of content. My book covers a wide range of development of cultures in history, starting with the Paleolithic epoch and closing with a firmly established classical patriarchy, the Roman Empire. At first, by my analysis, I demonstrate that societies in the Paleolithic epoch were not at all dominated by man the hunter. Instead, they were mother-centered, but not yet matriarchal in the full sense. The beginnings of the Neolithic epoch in West Asia showed the slowly evolution of matriarchal patterns, including the invention of the female genealogy, which by no means is a matter of course. The first societies with classical matriarchal patterns did arise here. Later, these classical matriarchal patterns were transferred to Europe, where they were further developed in an independent and highly creative way during millennia in the various cultural regions of Europe. In the Bronze Age, the development in the Eurasian steppe led to the first patriarchal patterns and to considerable upheavals in West Asia. These changes in steppe societies had already begun in the Neolithic age and became not only noticeable in the neighboring cultures, but also in Europe, which led to its patriarchalization again during millennia. In Asia Minor, with its very ancient matriarchal cultures, a female resistance evolved against the early patriarchy. It was formed by the appearance of Amazon societies, the history of which is outlined in the book. A different cultural path led to the rise of patriarchy in Mesopotamia. The cause of this development is based on different geographical conditions, whose challenges had to be tackled by the people. I analyzed the cause and the outcome of this development. The increasing patriarchalization of Europe, however, did not result in a uniform societal type. Different late matriarchal societies persisted for a long time in Europe south of the Alps and generated there a variety of phenomena in the Bronze Age. In Europe north of the Alps, in spite of the early patriarchal social order here, the influence of women remained, resulting in cultures with many matriarchal elements. Generalized war and patriarchy did not arise until the Iron Age. With the aggressive expansion of Iron Age peoples in Europe and the establishment of the Roman military empire and its later breakdown. From this wide range of topics, I would like to present three here, not in detail, but to give you some more information about them. I have chosen these three. First, the so-called trade in early history. Second, the evolution of motherline. Third, the rise of patriarchy, 2 examples. Now the first topic, the so-called trade in early history. With my knowledge on this topic, I hope I can give Genevieve pleasure by showing that gift-giving was prevalent in the Paleolithic and Neolithic epochs. But contrary to just claiming it, I will give the archaeological evidence, which has been formulated by some archaeologists themselves. Also, they did not see the consequences of their insights. Besides hunting, one more economic activity of men was the so-called trade. It is believed that the wide-ranging finds of raw materials and exotic objects in areas where they are not naturally found indicate the existence of trade. This has led to the conclusion that wide communication networks existed, a persuasive hypothesis, since migrating groups in the Paleolithic encountered others and shared experiences. But now it is claimed that trade was in the hands of men who supposedly controlled it. There has been clear criticism of this hypothesis by less biased archaeologists. They say that Paleolithic humans were always on the move. They were not confined to watch over their goods, but moved, sometimes seasonally, sometimes for new hunting and gathering sites. In the process, they took along all kinds of objects, including special stones and other items they found by chance, which explains how these objects came to be distributed across wide areas. However, these people did not travel long distances to find these objects for subsequent trading activities. Interesting objects were passed along from one group to the next, meaning that objects, not persons, traveled long distances. In any case, trade is not an adequate description of this process, since it presumes a purposeful acquisition of desired goods and also a group of traders who travel long distances for this specific purpose. The actual situation was quite different. It is significant that all the goods traveling long distances were luxury goods, not needed for daily life. So we are dealing here with a very effective peacekeeping method that functioned exceedingly well. The people of the Paleolithic era, when encountering others, could avoid conflict and communicate friendly through gifts as tokens of peace. Seen from this perspective, they did indeed have wide-ranging communication networks, within which the rare objects used as gifts were byproducts. For the Neolithic epoch, we also have evidence for gift-giving. Archaeologists found out that people practiced a high degree of division of labor, surely with unequal skill and probably with variable success, but all goods, even luxury goods, were always distributed equally in the houses of the settlement. No one could be found who profited from the division of labor or who monopolized specialized inventions at the expense of the community. Of course, this sharing of goods, which led to equal distribution, was not done in a profane way, but was included in their council gatherings and religious festivals. This observation holds for early Neolithic settlements in Europe, as seen by the case study of Dimini in Thessaly, done by Stella Suvazzi, as well as for late matriarch societies in the Bronze Age, of which Minoan Crete is the most famous example, as shown by the excellent research of John Cichon. Luxury goods, such as exceptionally beautiful painted ceramics and exquisite shell jewelry, were also exported far and wide. But here too, no hierarchy could be seen in these communication relationships. Instead, the goods played a role as gifts in peace building between neighboring settlements and with those in more distant cultural regions. Now, my second topic, some more about the evolution of motherline. Not in detail here, but I would like to give some more information about this. With my second topic, I would like to open our eyes to the possibility that female genealogy was invented by women in the Neolithic, and that from then on it has existed in elaborated form throughout the whole epoch. But what is the evidence for this idea? We find some evidence in Neolithic iconography, which provides obvious indications for the development of the motherline in this epoch. Appearing widely throughout West Asia, this means the Fertile Crescent in Anatolia, female double figurines have been found, a curious form of representation which continued in Europe. Vicky Noble has compiled the various aspects of such female double figurines in her much interesting book, The Double Goddess. Let me give some examples. At first, see two-headed figures where two female heads emerge from a single block as if growing from a single root. I will show the picture now. Here you can see number AA, several large and small two-headed figurines from Jordania, 7th millennium. The next, a marble two-headed figure with two sets of breasts, but emerging from a single block from Çatalhöyük, 7th millennium. A two-headed abstract disc-like figure in alabaster found in central Anatolia, 3rd millennium. A two-headed figure with only one pair of breasts from the Windshark culture, Southeast Europe, 5th millennium. Female double figurines also occur side by side, not two-headed but completely alike. For example, 5 miniatures of hammered gold, each with 2 identical women, Central Anatolia, 3rd millennium. The wide distribution and enormously long prevalence of this motif shows that it expressed something important, and that even with its variations, it had a fixed meaning. Some people have speculated about the meaning of the figurines without considering the relevant cultural context, which is the Neolithic social order. In terms of this, the meaning becomes clearer. Most probably, they were representations of the mother-daughter pair, with its crucial role in the formation of a mother line based on mother-daughter sequence. Looking for further support in Neolithic iconography for this interpretation, we can see that the repertoire of images also includes pairs of female figurines with one situated over, under, or within the other, as in these examples. Here, in the first picture, AF, you see 3 aligned double figures in the same position, all in identical birthing position. The lower figures emerging from the upper as with daughters being born by mothers. On the bottom, here, here, and here. On the bottom, the same schematic figure in the same position appears in a row of 6, as if the daughter generation has doubled itself. This is a fresco from Châteauhul. Here, in AG, a grand lady with 2 leopards. Below her 2 women as daughters, here, who are arranged as a continuation of the mother's figure, also from Châteauhul. The same motif, so simplified and highly schematized, in 3 eye figurines from North Syria, 3rd millennium. 2 show a little daughter figure inside the mother figure. Here and here, it's already growing. And with the 3rd, the little figure has emerged, as if grown upwards from her. The same idea clearly depicted in a marble figure from the Cyclades Islands, Greek Aegean Sea, 3rd millennium. The smaller female figure stands on the head of the larger female, with the 2 forming a line, the mother line. The motif was thus realized in various ways in the art of different Neolithic cultural regions. This kind of sculptural and pictorial artifacts continued to be numerous throughout the millennia in West Asia and Europe, and dating from these early epochs, they have been found all over the world. Everywhere they express the same thing, the recognition and development of the mother line, a social and cultural fact of extreme importance for establishing the classical matriarchies of the Neolithic. The fact that it is so much emphasized in this epoch demonstrates that it was a new development. If female genealogy would have already been known in the Paleolithic or at the beginnings of humankind, it would have been a matter of course, and the Neolithic emphasis on it would not make much sense. In Europe, the motif was carried forward in both cultural forms. The Windshark culture, I just showed an example, and in abstract forms. I would like to show some examples of the abstract forms. Here you see, these abstract forms are engraved on several megalithic stones in the Great Passage tomb of Gavrinis in Brittany, France, 4th millennium. Archaeologists call this motif, archaeologists call it motifs of growth. But which kind of growth is meant here? Growing plants don't look like that. But the arching growth motifs proliferating upwards, each having a small vulva-like opening below, here, 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 everywhere, they represent the growth of the mother line. The mother line, here, growing upwards. Arching growth motifs to the side, here, 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 and here, 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 show side branches of the same line. On the margins of this stone, the female line reproducing itself is graphically repeated here and here. Very clear, the little vulva-like openings. Another example. This is on the right side of a megalithic stone from the tomb of Newgrange, Ireland, 4th millennium. Here, the same abstract motif returns, transformed and less clear, but we still can see how female arches grow out of the central cartouche in all directions. Here, 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 here. Another example from Europe is especially convincing. It has come to light from late Neolithic pile-dwelling villages. These villages had houses of worship with murals, and such a painting has recently been reconstructed in detail. In the shallow waters of Lake Constance, numerous painted fragments from individual house walls of a Neolithic culture were preserved. Meticulously reassembled, they produce a mural of 7 to 9 meters in length. Abstractly drawn figures etched in white can be seen there. Here, abstractly drawn figures etched in white can be seen there. A crossband adorns every figure. A dot pattern is crossband here, you see it here. A dot pattern covers them, and the sculpted life-size breasts, they are sculpted, that have this sculpted life-size breasts that have been inserted characterize them as women. This mural painting depicts 7 women, all equal in size. The heads, represented by a round disc, are surrounded by a short halo, and their arms, short arms here and here, which are also bright, are raised as if for a blessing. It honors the German archaeologist Helmut Schlichterle, who rightly identifies them as female ancestors, as holy primordial mothers who stood at the origins of the clans and have now been deified. This interpretation of the figures as ancestral mothers of 7 matrilineal clans is supported by the small drawings between the figures. The little triangles here, little triangles can be seen below with attached with attached angles like an M, here, here. And directly above the triangles, such M or W shapes stack up vertically one above the other. These abstract signs indicate links representing wide open legs, that is, women in the birth position. Set above one another, they symbolize a descending series of ancestresses in the sense of the female birth line, which the discovering archaeologists interpreted as born of, here also born of, and so on. The signs are, according to him, a clear representation of the mother line, a tree of life that arises from matrilineality. Finally, they end in the little triangles. Here and here is not so clear, here is very clear. The little triangles, these are most likely to be houses with the M symbol on the gable, here, as found directly on rock carvings and on pile dwellings of Lake Constance. I'll show you some of these houses. Here, these are houses. They have been reconstructed at Lake Constance, and you see this M shape on the gable. This means that the current clan house emerges. Oh, I go back to the other picture again. So this means that the current clan house emerges. The clan houses emerges from the line of the ancestral mothers, the living people being the last born along this mother line. Thus, the mother house with the M on top here is a clear sign of matrilocality. Above all, there are the primordial mothers here, the primordial mothers with the abilities to nourish and to bless. Here and so on. These are 7 in a row. I have not space here to show all of the 7 drawings. Above all, the other primordial mothers with the abilities to nourish and to bless. As deified ancestresses, they are also mother goddesses, and the number 7 shows that each clan worshipped its own. Discovering and developing female genealogy or matrilineality was one of women's most important cultural achievements in the Neolithic epoch. With it, for the first time, they conceptualized the idea of blood relationship, and they gave the whole society a new order according to the mother line, not only in social, but also in economic and political respect. Now, let me make some remarks on the third topic. The rise of patriarchy, 2 examples. I would also like to present the 2 examples of the rise of patriarchy, which are included in my book. They explain the origin of patriarchy in the Eurasian steppe and Europe on the one hand, and in Mesopotamia on the other hand. They show how different the conditions were for this development, as well as the societal forms resulting from these conditions. As it is a long story in each individual case, I can only provide some glimpses of these processes. A word of warning. My overview here should not be mistaken in any way for a complete account. Such processes require a thorough step-by-step explanation of the chain of causes and effects that have eventually resulted in patriarchal society. Maria Gimbutas has already begun to research the long story of the rise of patriarchy in the Eurasian steppe and Europe. However, the initial cause was not the horse and advantages for mobility, but the degradation of the environment, which affected many peoples in these wide regions. Today, vast areas that were once fertile land are now steppe and desert. I would like to show you a map. The Eurasian steppe, reaching from the east from China through Central Asia, via Central Asia to Europe. And here it's the German word Wüste, means desert. These are all deserts which accompany this small, relatively small belt of steppe. And in the north are the huge forests of the taiga. Such desertification continued from generation to generation, lasting millennia, and these peoples literally lost the ground under their feet and gradually became fully nomadic. They tried to survive by continually enlarging the herds of cattle and keeping them together by the new technique of riding horses. But this was the wrong response in a degrading environment, for it destroyed the pastures even further. The increasing scarcity of land for grazing set peoples against each other, and conflicts ensued. To fight effectively, they needed a chief to coordinate the warriors. So the charismatic leader came into being, who was regarded as a people's rescuer and therefore granted a lot of privileges. Societies with these patterns aggressively spread far and wide, at first in order to survive, but later because of greed. The Eurasian steppe, with its vast plains, was perfectly suited for migration. So patriarchal herder warriors spread to the east, to the south, and to the west, to Europe. Everywhere they conquered and occupied any fertile land they could find, and so on with this story. The geographical situation The geographical preconditions were completely different with the peoples in Mesopotamia. They lived in the narrow area between the two big rivers, Euphrates here and Tigris. This is Mesopotamia. Surrounded by mountains on this side and deserts on this side. And here they practiced agriculture. But just as it was not riding of horses that caused patriarchal patterns in the steppe, likewise, it was not the artificial irrigation system that brought about patriarchy in Mesopotamia. In fact, this technology had already been invented before the rise of patriarchy. So we can again see here that a new technology alone can never change a society in its entirety. Explanations of this kind are too simplistic. But as the population grew in Mesopotamia, slowly by birth, but then more quickly by increasing immigration, the Mesopotamian farmers could not immigrate and spread elsewhere, like the herder warriors could do, because the farmers were tied to their fields in this area. So they started to improve their irrigation system and to manage the distribution of the precious water more and more rigorously. For this purpose, they needed an increasing administration. And the administrators fixed the problem by creating a stratified society. That means an organizational system that placed different groups of people one above the other, like stacking boxes to save space. There was no evil intent. They simply wanted to guarantee the well-being of everybody in a situation of decreasing water supply combined with an increasing population. In this way, an elite developed. In this way, an elite developed in Mesopotamia who created the hierarchical organization of a state. Also, this was not their initial intention. However, as soon as they realized that being the elite is a highly advantageous situation, they initiated domination and became patriarchal. Later, such city-states fought against each other because water was increasingly in short supply, and ever larger structures of states were created to stop this fighting in order to establish law and order at peace. But the latter never arose. I would like to stop here, but I hope I have at least piqued your interest in finding out more about these topics. I'm very much looking forward to your comments on my book and fervently wish inspiring discussions and further scholarly work will arise from it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Heidi. That was a wonderful introduction to your book and so many thoughts. The main thing, I'm never going to look at those abstract drawings the same now that I see that matriarchal lineage going back, including anchoring them into the mother houses. That was just brilliant to see and to hear. So I'm wondering, Jen, before we move into the questions, did you have any comments, or did you have a question for Heide that you might want to pose?
No, I just wanted to say, like you said, that those drawings are wonderful, and I'm happy to have lived long enough to see that revelation that you've made of those drawings. So thank you so much. It's just an illumination.
I thank you, Genevieve. I'm much honored by your comment, but it was an archaeologist, a well-trained archaeologist who gave this interpretation.
Okay.
I know him personally. We had a wonderful discussion session once in Switzerland, and I admire him for this work. But he didn't know that I would include this work in my book to show that the mother line was such an important invention and development in Neolithic times.
Well, thank you so much for that.
I refer to him.
To us. Yeah.
So great. All right, so I think we're ready for our first question. So Liliana, I see that there are a couple of questions in the Q&A, and for you who are listening today, if you have a question, please do put it in the Q&A box so that we can make sure that we present it properly for Heidi to answer today.
Hello, Heidi. Thank you very much. I have a question from Lynn Fairfax, and she says, hey, hi, and thank you. What would you suggest an everyday person do in order not to get trapped in the explanations of patriarchal perspective? Thank you.
Yeah. I try to say it. It's so important if you want to understand what patriarchy is and how it came about. We at first have to understand what matriarchy is, and to learn about its features on all levels of society, the economic, social, political, and cultural level. I did it when I learned a lot from anthropology. This is the reason why I at first tried to learn much more from still existing living matriarch societies and going deeper into their way of life, for I thought from history alone, I could not get the full picture of what a matriarch society is. And with this knowledge in background, a detailed knowledge about how matriarch societies are structured and how they function, I dared to look closer into history of cultures. And there you can see many things in a completely different light than archaeologists see them. Because I do not accuse them, because archaeologists are usually no anthropologists, and they do not know about the great variety of human societal forms, and they have no knowledge about the matriarchal form of society. So we can look in a completely different way on many of their findings. Some do it themselves now; they have become more cautious, but to find out in history what really matriarchal societies' patterns are, and how patriarchy came into this, needs this background knowledge. I did the research on the history of culture on this background knowledge. This I would recommend, really, and not to start simply with history of cultures, for I made the experience that many ideas and speculations from our own mindset were then back projected into history of cultures. Yeah, we can avoid. Oh, sorry, we can avoid these back projections by having a very good knowledge about matriarch society, so we can see it much better and look through things how they might have happened.
Thank you, Heidi. Perhaps this is a good time to for me to just remind people, I don't know if this will flip, but in Heidi's opus, Matriarchal Societies, Studies on Indigenous Cultures Around the Globe. It's a thorough overview, and interestingly enough, on March the 12th, Heidi will begin a six-session book study that she'll be offering through an organization out of New York, that she'll be leading us through this book to go deeply into modern matriarchal studies. So I'll put the information in the chat so you can follow up on that on your own. But she is recommending that we learn very deeply about matriarchal studies, and this is an opportunity, other than going to Germany, that you can learn directly from the author about her theory.
You can learn online. I have study courses online in English from the Academy, so you can go deep. They go through 2 years, so you can go deep into this matter. And there you see how that matriarchal societies of the living examples are the first part of my main work, and now looking into history as the second part of my main work, and both belongs together, to avoid that we are trapped in with our explanations or expectations in patriarchal ideas.
Beautiful, beautiful. Liliana, do you have another question, or shall I go to Judith?
I have another question. And
Okay.
it's again from Lynn Fairfax. And she says, I use the word goddess not as opposite nor diminutive of the patriarchal God, but as a symbol of a different worldview. Does using the word goddess as an overlay for that nameless energy help free us from the patriarchal perspective?
Yes, I think we have to refer to two ideas here. When we use today the word goddess, it means to break through the one-dimensional idea, patriarchal idea, that there existed only gods. It's a little bit a political argument to talk about goddesses, to show that not only male figures in monotheism and so on were religious, were in the religious, were in the different religions, and it's an opposition against the monotheistic and other thoughts that only the male can be divine. Of course, this is one part of this argument. The other part is that among each other, and we know what we mean with a goddess, the concept of feminine divine might be much better. For it includes also indigenous ideas about the feminine divine, and indigenous people rarely would like to name it goddess. So this is the other part of the argument. I think we needed it both. It depends on the situation in which we are talking about this. When I'm talking about the theologians, then I always talk about the goddess to make them angry, for example. But when we talk among each other, then of course we know that we mean feminine divine in its many various expressions and forms all around the world.
Thank you, Heide. Okay, that's wonderful. Judith, do you have a question for Heide?
So can we assume from your talk that patriarchy arose in different ways, different dynamics in different places, but from the experience of scarcity, that can we conclude that scarcity is of either water or land is behind the rise of patriarchy?
It depends. It depends on the situation which you want to analyze. We have a special situation of a rise of patriarchy, which is well known in histories. It's the rise of patriarchy in North America by the invasion of the white people. I would not like to reduce this complex historic process simply to scarcity. We can also say it was overpopulation in Europe, but it was also greed of European emperors and people who looked for their adventures. So it's a multifaceted thing. And I think it's not so good to reduce it all to scarcity, for we have, in any case, we have to explain very complex and long-lasting historical processes. Scarcity is one factor in this. One, I think not a much important factor in this, but not the only one. Therefore, I presented just the example of the rise of patriarchy in North America, where many matriarchal indigenous peoples were conquered and their cultures were destroyed. What was the reason why so many people emigrated from Europe? The reason is not only one, these have been many, as I just tried to mention. I cannot give a full analysis here, it would be too far. But I want to say that we must be cautious with these simplistic explanations. We have to look at these processes in a different way to understand better.
Thank you, Heidi. Yes, it's very complex, and to reduce it down to one or two things might really do a disservice to the complexity of it, and that each of the complex items that brought about patriarchy is also another, I think, doorway to actually getting out of patriarchy. That you know.
Right.
So the more doorways, the better.
Wonderful. I think as we understand these differences of the processes who led to patriarchy, then also, just as you said it, the solution to get out are also different. I think in Africa, women and men who don't want to continue with patriarchy, they have a different way to leave it behind. And we in Europe also have a different way in West Asia, in North America, and so on. It's not only one way who makes us out of this mess. I'm sorry to say that. There are many ways.
And I'm grateful that there are many ways. Yes. Judith, do you have another question for us?
There's a, I'm paraphrasing this a bit. Have you been in touch with Hallie Ingerhart and others who have documented, excuse me, the ancient goddess and matriarchal images and their books of art? Is that one of the things that, one of the areas that you have explored?
I know, I'm sorry, I know a lot of artists who create wonderful work with matriarchal images, goddesses from many regions of the world, photographers who photographed matriarchs of several indigenous societies. I know some of them. Please understand that I cannot know all of them. I know that Sally Egelhardt made wonderful pieces of art about Spider-Woman and other. It's great. I'm in touch with many interesting artists, and if this will become more, I do not mind.
Thank you, Heidi. What about another question, Judith?
Part of that same question is whether there's a network of scholars who share these kinds of images. And I see that Letecia has put in one option, but asking about networks that share matriarchal studies.
Yeah, of course. Matriarchal studies, which I have founded in the first publication was in 1978, where I presented in provisional definition of matriarchy from my reading in anthropological literature. It started then. I started alone with this. But of course, in the development of this, I'm in contact with many scholars, and I learned from them, and they got ideas from me. And the organization of 3 World Congresses, we tried to bring together all the white scholars who were dealing with this topic, even if they don't say it in the clear ways, matriarchal, some said it. Genevieve, for example, clearly defined her work with matriarchy and others. We brought them together on the 3 World Congresses, and we brought together indigenous women and men, also scholars from their own societies who talked about their societies, about the problems, about the situation. We learned a lot from them. So I'm working in a network of white scholars and in a network of indigenous women and scholars. I'm indebted much to indigenous women who taught me a lot about their societies, especially Barbara Mann, about the Iroquois societies, the Iroquois traditions, and many others. So a new field of knowledge like modern matriarchal studies cannot develop without a network and a connection between many people who are active in this field. And in my theory, in my book, I try to bring together as many of this knowledge as I could. For modern matriarchal studies doesn't consist only in individual studies, but it's an overarching field now who brings all these studies together and creates a framework in which they are better understood, and we can see how all this fits together. Of course, in my own insights, in my own research. This modern matriarchal studies is a field which is based on a vast theory and on many empirical examples which are included in here.
Thank you, Heidi. I appreciate that. And I know that there is another group that hosted your birthday and the other matriarchal congress. Could you say that name out loud, and I'll try to find that. This is I think it's Andrea's organization in Germany that hosted your last. It's the
Don't understand what you mean.
okay. I'll look up the group that just hosted your 80th birthday celebration. Your birthday celebration.
Yes.
What is the name of that group?
Yes, it's a group. Yes, these are groups of my students who develop now the topic first. No, they develop not at the moment. They develop not, but they try to spread this topic of modern matriarchal studies to more and more people. This is a matri forum. They call themselves matri forum. These are 4 of my students who really do a good work. Every year they bring, they organize a smaller conference of 1 day. And also a good friend of mine in Switzerland, every year, of course, the Matri Forum organizes a smaller conference every year. And in Switzerland, a good friend of mine, Christina Schlatter, organizes also a discussion day every year on the topic of modern matriarchal studies, where she brings me together with scholars who touches this field but do not know so much about modern matriarchal studies to spread that this field is present and it is developing in our days. And the other Matri Forum are for younger women who spread the knowledge about matriarchal studies too. But this is done in Germany and in Switzerland. For on international level, I'm active on my own with the study courses, which are presented in English and online, where every interested woman and man can participate and go deeper into this matter. This is the activity I do on my own in Academy Hagia.
Thank you, Heide. Jen, did you have a question for Heide? Did you? I see you leaning into your screen.
Yeah, I do. Wait, let me. Is it? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Now, my question is: does hierarchy, patriarchal hierarchy, always go with the individual male dominance in the family? So on the social level, when it's patriarchal, is the family always patriarchal and vice versa?
At first, these hierarchies develop with ruling peoples, be them the charismatic leaders or be them administrators and administrating elites. And it lasts very long time until the hierarchy has been set through in the family. For example, in Europe, in European history, until medieval times, the lower classes, the people cling together in clans, and women had a lot to say there. They were not patriarchal in spite of the upper class of the nobility and the clerics who were very patriarchal, but it lasts a long time until patriarchy was set through in the family structures too. This started later because this started much later, and at first they tried to make these clan systems patriarchal, to have a clan head, a male clan head, which was not always accepted. And the nuclear family comes much later. This social pattern is not longer than not older than 200 years, where the male head is important for this family. So the situation is very different. For example, in other countries, even if we have a male ruling elite, people still continue in the lower classes with matriarchal patterns, which was also in Europe a long time the same situation. So it's not the same, not the same, because the lower classes very often do not do what the ruling classes are demanding from them. They are a little bit, they are very often opposite to this, also in family structures.
And there wouldn't be male violence necessarily in the among individuals
In the
against
families,
women,
in the families, where
or even with a family structure that's different, the men would not be dominant over women.
when
And in these patriarchal structures where in the society at large, when in the individual relations.
you see, I take for example, we have to look at the different historical epochs. We have to look at the different historical epochs where the situation was changing. I can choose, it's only one example. Let me choose the medieval situation in Europe. There, the lower classes were farmers, which were much exploited by the feudal rulers. But the women were so important in these lower classes that of course, there might have been violence, and there has been violence, but women were so important that they have had still a strong position, not only in the farmers, also in the guilds of the artisans and so on. Women had a strong position in medieval times, which is not so well known. Only when the modern times began with Renaissance and the witch hunt began, then women were deeply suppressed, much more than it was before. So the situation was changing several times until women were really suppressed by male violence in families and in general, and they were forbidden to do their handicrafts and so on and so on. But this lasted hundreds of years until the 18th century, where the situation of women in Europe was most depressed.
Okay.
In medieval times, it was quite different. In medieval times, traditions, matriarchal traditions, or what I call matriarchal elements, continued in the lower classes, and especially among women, which gave them a much better position than it was later in the bourgeois times. So this I can say to this point. Only for Europe, this is a special part. It's quite different in other cultures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Yes, when you're wanting to address a systemic problem or a question, as you said, Heidi, before about the rise of patriarchy, it's different in every culture. So we can't necessarily generalize about violence in patriarchal lineages in that way. In some cases, let's see if, yes, go ahead, Heidi.
It depends which historical epoch you are looking at, which historical epoch you are looking, and at which class you are looking. Yeah, it's very different from class to class. For example, in medieval times, the more suppressed women were in the ruling class because they had to adapt to the patriarchal patterns. In the lower classes, women were freer. Of course, they were despised for this from the upper classes, but they moved quite freely with their affairs and their dealing with the goods and the markets and so on and so on. So We really have to, when we want to know, to have knowledge about historical process, we have to define clearly which epoch and which class and so on and so on. Patriarchy was never one monolithic block, never. There are so many matriarchal elements and traditions in it, in the lower classes or marginalized classes, and patriarchy always tries to swallow this up and to become bigger and so on. But it didn't succeed. It did not succeed until today. Even because we know we have still today some perfectly matriarchal peoples, even marginalized in different continents. And patriarchal organization tries to swallow them up even today.
And we're glad they haven't swallowed up all of the elements. We're grateful that we don't have to start from scratch. So let's see if Liliana has another question for us.
I do. This is a question from John Marler. It's in the chat, and it says, "Thank you, Heide, for your latest book and for this fascinating presentation. I was pleased to see that in your recent book, you mentioned matriarchal patterns within patriarchal periods as continuities from earlier periods. Can you say more about this continuity in contrast with the concept that matriarchal patterns are inseparable with patriarchy?"
Yeah, yes, I can say something more. I try to do my best. I think fully developed matriarchy is not compatible with patriarchy. For the patterns in a fully developed matriarchy, in a matriarchal society, are completely different than what we know from patriarchy. But this does not mean that when patriarchy came up, it succeeded quickly or at once to dominate all the different levels of a society. It was not the case. Even in Europe, patriarchy needed about 1,000 years to be set through and to be forced upon the people, forced upon families, and so on in every societal on every societal level. But these matriarchal elements within patriarchy are often hidden, or they are despised, and at any time they are also exploited. So what I just said before, with the lower class farmers in medieval Europe, even if women had more freedom and had parts of their own traditions, which I would call matriarchal elements, they were suppressed. This class was so much exploited by the patriarchal rulers that these matriarchal elements kept women alive, but they were not strong enough to free themselves from the patriarchal rulers. So the situation of matriarchal elements or matriarchal groups within patriarchy are always ambivalent. They have their own situation and have their, so they can continue with some parts of their lives they had before, but this is also exploited by the patriarchal rulers. For patriarchal rulers always live parasitically from what the people they suppress in the lower classes do. Yeah. I'm looking
Thank you,
for.
Heidi.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Let me give let me give an example. I think you know the story of the weavers in I think in 18th century England. What was the situation of the people who were weaving. They were brought into the factories. They were forced to work with little money and to do this weaving, at the fabrication of fabrics with machines. It was Karl Marx who analyzed the situation in his book, The Capital. But the weaving capacity was a very old, millennia-old tradition of women, and a handicraft of women through all the epochs of matriarchy and patriarchy. And because women continued with this art and this knowledge, they could be exploited, and their knowledge about weaving could be taken away from them and used by these early capitalists to bring the people to do weaving by the machines and to exploit the people in an extreme extent. So matriarchal elements maybe help people, but it's always a danger that these elements are taken away. They are taken away from them and are used to make the ruling class richer, stronger, and so on. I hope this example was clear to some extent.
Thank you, Heidi. Let's see if Judith has another question for us, and then we'll take another one from Liliana.
There's a discussion going on in the chat about the role of men and the role of supportive men now in terms of bringing about the changes that we're looking for. So what do you have to say about how we can support men and what the role of men is in this process?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't think that we should support men, even if they are cooperative. If men are cooperative, they should support us. If we get support from these men with all what women do to change the patriarchal mindset, to change patriarchal patterns, then they are really very welcome. But it's not our task to support the men. It's their task to support us, to free not only women from these patriarchal patterns, but to free women and men from these patriarchal patterns. It's not a matter between women and men. It's a matter against a whole system which makes people unhappy, women and men. So I hope that we will find many more men who support women to change the whole system.
Thank you, Heide. I think that's a good plan to bring women to the center. Liliana.
Yes, I have a question from Jasmine Belkiran, and she says, I read that it was tilling with the plow that brought the flourishing cultures in Mesopotamia down, degrading the once fertile land, no longer able to store the water. How do you see this? And could you say that patriarchal structures spread due to the degradation of a breakdown of ecosystems?
I think these are two questions in one. I tried to answer. Tilling with the plow in Mesopotamia was not the original way to work with the land. We have in Mesopotamia and earlier cultures which were clearly matriarchal. And in matriarchal cultures, they have a very good principle. This is a principle of balance between humans and nature. So a matriarchal society never would try to overuse the land by any means to overuse the land, not to destroy their own ground on which they are standing. When the situation with tilling the plough arose, a lot of other causes have been before. This is not the first cause, not the initial cause. The initial cause is what I say, that this country suffered from decreasing water supply combined with an increasing population. Then they had to do different things. They dig more and more channels to bring water to the fields. They separated the fields in always smaller plots, so that people have always smaller plots where to live on. And plowing was not such a problem, because for plowing you need a bigger area to do it there. But with smaller plots, it was more done by hands, what they were doing there. And of course, the more you try to gain from the land, the more you are destroying it. But this was not the patriarchal mindset. It was a situation that they had to survive under difficult conditions. This always is the beginning. The people don't begin with a patriarchal mindset. They try to survive in very different conditions, as it was in the Eurasian steppe, and as it was in different situation in Mesopotamia, with scarcity of water and land. And of course, when they try to survive in this way, and they use the land or more and more, then without any intention, they start to destroy the land, the environment. And the effect is devastating for them. And so they continue again with the same problem and the same solution. This is what I call it's the wrong response they gave in the situation of degrading environment. We have the same situation today. Many people of today give the wrong response to the degrading of environment and problems with climate, air and water. And this is, I think, is really a very difficult situation to come out of this. But then when patriarchy later is established by these processes, which I try to describe in short, then patriarchy continues to exploit the soil, the water, the air, and so on, which patriarchal societies did through the last 6 or 7 millennia, until we are in a situation today where it becomes very critical to humankind in its entirety to exploit what nature can give. But at the beginning, it's not only the plow or the horse or irrigation systems which are the problems. The problem is an extreme situation where people try to survive and gave the wrong responses. And the development goes on in a worse way. So, to put it very short.
Thank you, Heidi. Yes, when you have the wrong response, you're going to go in the wrong direction, not to actually address the root of the problem. So thank you for that. Judith, I see that there are quite a few questions in the Q&A, and we have only about 30 minutes. Can you pick a question out of there? I'd like to be able to help people who've been patiently waiting for their question to be answered.
There's another long discussion in the chat about the role of sexuality and same-sex relationships and two-spirit and other types of relationships. And people are wondering whether you can say a bit more about how that worked in the societies you're discussing.
You can never know these things from history alone. So in my my recent book, where I did to try to describe long historical processes of how a matriarchy was developed, how it spread, and how patriarch came up, we cannot answer these questions from history. We can ask the people, the historical people, what they think, what they do, and so on. This question refers to still existing matriarch societies, and here we have another problem. We have the problem that we as white people cannot go there asking them about their same sex and so on relations. It would be very unpolite, and many and they are not inclined to answer our question and to take and to take a stance to our problems. This I want to say as a warning at the beginning. But of course, some research has been done, especially by my friend Veronica Benoit-Thompson, Huchitan, where she could find out that they have no problem with a change of genders in the society. If a boy wants to live as a woman, he is dressed like a woman and he's working in the sphere of the female half of the society, and vice versa for a girl. So there is never, the integrity of the body is never violated. The only change, the sphere of actions means in the economy and other things, they change over, these boys change over in the sphere of action and activities of the women. And if a girl wants to live as a man, she changes over in the activities of the economy which men are doing. What is never, this is very easy for them. What they never break up is this polar organization of the society, that women have their own part in economy, traditions, rituals, and men have their own part. This is organized cooperatively, but each sex has its own half of activities in each society. Behind this is a spiritual idea that also between men and women and their activities must be a balance. And so when you need a balance, you need two scales. So then you can create a balance between them. This is never broken. And so these individual people who decide to go to the other part are not a problem for them. This is what I can say to this from the research Veronica did in Huchitan.
Part of that same question is the interpretation of the double figures, which have often been interpreted, as you know, as a lesbian couples, and why you consider them to be mother-daughter rather than a same-sex couple.
Yes, okay. This is the same point. We cannot know about lesbian situations in history. We cannot know about this. I think this is a projection of our situation, which is important and political, onto history. We have an example from a well-known example, which might be a last example in this whole row, which with these double figurines which went over millennia. This is a famous pair of Demeter and Korah, and these are clearly mother and daughter. And if you see how many these double figurines are, and that they are all around the world, why lesbian situations should be so important in Neolithic times that they always depicted it. This would not make any sense. But the mother-daughter pair is important, because from this develops the motherline, and this motherline is the basic structure of each matriarch society today and in Neolithic times. So I would not follow this interpretation that these are lesbian couples. I think this is a back protection.
Thank you, Heidi. That's pretty clear. Let's just take another question from Liliana.
Okay, I have a question from the Q&A from Deborah Vance. She says, in the 1980s book, The Chalice and the Blade, Rian Eisler distinguishes between matriarchal and matrilineal. Is this a viable distinction? I can ask it again.
Yes, I understood. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I do not know what is the distinction which Ryan A. Eisler made between matriarchal and matrilineal. Could you give me this distinction, her criteria of distinction, please?
She doesn't explain much. She just says in the 1980s book, The Chalice and the Blade, Rian Eisler distinguishes between matriarchal and matrilineal. Is this a viable distinction? That's all I have.
I do not know how Ryan Eisler defined these both concepts. I don't know. This was my question to you. How did
I have no idea.
No idea. Okay.
No idea.
I did this distinction in my own research. And I think this distinction is very important. For when you look in anthropological literature, they always talk about matrilineal society, and everybody abhors the term matriarchal. Why? Because matriarchy and matriarchal is a taboo in academia. So no one who don't want to lose his or her reputation would use the term matriarchal. And they use, everywhere they use matrilineal, which is an accepted scientific term. When I meet anthropologists who are open, I always say, we have to make this distinction, for matrilineal means only the relationship in the motherline. But in a matriarch society, women have not only this, which of course puts them socially at the center, mothers at the center. In a matriarchal society, women have also the economy in their hands. And this gives them a completely different and stronger position than in a society which is only matrilineal. We have the situation that there exist societies where the economy in the hands of men and women have this still matrilineality. This weakens the situation of women quite a lot. These are societies of the northwest coast of North America where you have this. Men make big potlatches of the economy which is in their hands. But in a matriarchy, it is quite different. Women have the economy in their hands and they distribute it equally to each clan members or members of the community for the well-being of everybody. So in a matriarch society, we have these two decisive characteristics, matrilineality and the economy in the hands of women. And this is an important distinction which has never been made in anthropology. Very sad to say that.
There's a question in the chat from Natalie. I'm sorry, in the Q&A from Natalie that was asking about in your first example from the steps, you talked about the degradation of the environment from fertile lands to dead lands. Why did the degradation occur? Early agriculture?
Yeah, yes. I was very short about this. We have in the long history of humankind, the earth has changed, has undergone several climate changes. Think simply of the different ice ages in Paleolithic times. These were different situations the earth herself created. This was not the fault of the people. And also later, in the Neolithic times, there were shifts in climate situation, which were not caused by humans, but humans had to answer to this. So I think the first trigger to create these problems came from nature itself, nature herself or the earth. And in different regions of the earth, people had to answer to this, had to tackle these problems. But later, these problems were internalized in the development of patriarchy, and later, then the patriarchal society became the problem for other societies. But this degradation of environment, it was not everywhere the same. Some zones started to thrive and became more green, but in other parts, the climate changes caused desertification and problems for the people who lived there. So we have to look also at the different geographical zones and situations and geographical conditions which affected the people there.
Okay, and there's one that's a little bit related that comes from Terry Michaels, but it brings it current, that as we face environmental degradation now with climate change, war, etc., do you have any ideas from what you've learned that could help us in the event of another catastrophe to keep patriarchy from taking a stronger hold when rebuilding society?
This is a very important question, but I'm not a prophetess. When I see the situation in which we are today, it looks much worse than it was in history. Today, not only the earth with her changes and her different climate changes, today the degradation of environment and of climate is caused by humans themselves. This is a new situation. In earlier epochs, it was a changement of the earth herself. And humanity does it today itself, continues with this, not understanding how imminent the danger is. And at the same time, we have so many people who have to leave their homelands because of desertification, of hunger, of war, and so on. We have streams of migration today. So the situation which was in history difficult is in our time extremely more difficult. And I think the first step to come out is to recognize, to understand this, to understand that it's not possible to continue with destroying our environment and to continue to uproot whole people who have to flee and to migrate into other regions. We have to recognize this, and I hope that humankind is intelligent enough to stop this situation. What can we do? Of course, every individual, everybody of us can do something. Of course, we can do it, but it is not only dependent on us, because I think this patriarchal structure is so potent now. We have so much power in the hands of very few men, power in the form of weapons, power in the form of money, and so on. And I think this whole situation is very dangerous and is very pathologic. How can a few individuals have so much power over whole humanity and over the whole earth and all the biosphere there? So I think patriarchy is a misdevelopment. And if we recognize it, that it is a wrong development, I hope we can change it.
Thank you, Heide.
So the first step is to understand this and to see this and to recognize it. Not only, but I think humanity should should recognize this and know what it's about, and that this has to be stopped, or it's a wrong development, and we have to change this development again into the other way, to find the balance again among humanity, among humans, and between humanity and the earth. More, I cannot say more. I do not know what will be the outcome. We hope all for the best, for the better and the best.
Thank you, Heidi. I got a message from Liliana that she has another question.
Okay, I have a question from Marion Gerland, and she says, thank you, Heide. Did you research matriarchal roots in the continent of Africa, where many believe humanity originates?
Yes, thank you. You remind me of my coming duties. Of course, I do not want to describe the rise of patriarchy in West Asia and Europe. I would like to describe it also in India, in East Asia, in Africa. It's very important. Also in the both continents of South and North America. These are my coming projects, and these are, I have to say, these are big projects. But I think it's necessary to show how patriarchy came up in the different continents and cultural regions, so that the people there can think about it and can understand it and can find ways out. My next project is to describe matriarchal societies in Africa and India, East Asia, and to analyze how it came to patriarchy there. And my last project is dedicated to America, if I can live so long.
Thank you, Heide.
Well, we hope you live very long, Heide, and continue to live very well. Jen, you popped out. We have about 5 minutes left. Did you have a question or comment?
Yes,
Yes.
and one more question is, isn't it a combination of patriarchy and capitalism that is destroying the world and not just patriarchy?
Yes, yes, of course. The capitalist patriarchy, in my eyes, is still a much more dangerous patriarchy than it has been before, because everything and every living thing is commodified, made into a commodity, and is sold and exchanged, and so on and so on. Capitalist patriarchy is killing by transforming everything into a commodity, in a dead matter. So I think this capitalist mentality is the patriarchal capitalist patriarchal mentality is the worst which could happen to us. And it's so dangerous that it is spreading all over the world today by globalization and other developments. Of course, patriarchy had different forms in its history too. Early patriarchy, and then the feudal patriarchy of kings and farmers, and the capitalist patriarchy is the worst. We as individuals have as middle class, other individuals have the feeling we are freer now and can live a better life. But we have to look at the costs. The costs are, it's taken from the resources from nature, and it's taken from the resources of many other peoples in the so-called third world. So only a small part of humanity lives in capitalist patriarchy and lives quite well there, possibly, but the power to destroy is the most is the strongest in capitalist patriarchy, I think, as we can see. it's a potent, wie sagt man da, we can see it, how it goes, even if also the development of weapons has become more and more worse. So that we have today also produced in capitalist patriarchy weaponry, which is the multiplicity of overkill of all humanity and all living beings on the world. This is so crazy that we see what is the absurd end of patriarchy, and we are in the middle of this big problem today.
Yes, and thank you for your continuing research and work, both you, Heide, and Jen, to clarify what we need to move out of and perhaps what we can move into. We have a few more minutes, maybe one more question, Judith. Do you have one that might be a quick one?
Yeah, I'll give you an easy one to end. If the tree of life is the mother line, how do you understand the image of the serpent guarding the tree of life, which is found in many cultures such as Hebrew and Northern Europe? So the question is, the serpent guarding the tree of life, if the tree of life is, how does that relate to the mother line?
Yes, the question is clear and simple, but the answer cannot be clear, very simple, because the snake has so many meanings. Even in one culture, it has so many meanings. Let me just pick up one meaning. The serpent who is guarding the tree of life might be the very, very old meaning of the serpent is that this animal, when it sheds its old skin and rejuvenates, it is seen as a model for death and rebirth. And the religion of death and rebirth is very, very old. It comes from Paleolithic time, and most of the cultures of the earth had this rebirth religion. And the serpent is a symbol for this. And when the serpent guards the tree of life, then it is, of course, the guarantee is that every death every death is followed by a rebirth. So the tree of life can be renewed again and again and again. As many matriarchal people of today believe is that children are reborn ancestors, male and female. So the serpent as a symbol of death and rebirth is closely connected with the tree of life, because the ancestors, male and female, come back into the same tree of life, which continues and continues for a long time, forever. This is what I can say in short to this complex symbol combined with the tree of life. I hope.
Thank you, Heide. I think that was a good ending question. And I'm wondering if you have any closing words that you'd like to give us before I close this out, and I'll check with Jen too and see if she has any closing words. So Heide, please.
Yes, I would once again come back to the question of Joan Mahler. What are matriarchal elements more in patriarchy? I think mothering, what mothers do, or what people do who do mothering, that young beings can grow up happily and become adults. This is a matriarchal element which is everywhere. If mothers would not care for the young, for the children, they would not become adults. So humanity would die out, and patriarchy too, of course. So this is deeply matriarchal attitude, because matriarchal societies are based on this prototype of maternal behavior. And this is everywhere. But instead that we can see it as a matriarchal element, a matriarchal power, mothers are made invisible because patriarchy since millennium is exploiting mothers in an extreme way. Without mothers, it would not exist. So the matriarchal attitudes of mothers must be exploited anytime, again and again. Millions of mothers are doing it, and they don't believe it, that it's so important what they do. So I think it's important what Genevieve said, because he said the prototype of the mother is the model for gift giving. And the gift giving, when it's recognized and put at the center, then it could and should change patriarchy, which lives parasitical on this. It lives parasitical of what mothers everywhere and all over the world are doing. So let's put motherhood again at the center, and let's take our power back as mothers and also as women and men who are caring and looking for others. And let's see that this is a power to change patriarchy if we could do it.
That's a beautiful way to end your discussion, Heide. Very beautiful. Thank you for that. And Jen, would you have any last words before I actually give some reminders for our upcoming events?
Well, thank you so much, Heide. Your work is so important for the salvation of the earth, of Mother Earth, and of humanity. And we need to think of the gift economy of mothering and matriarchy as the theme that goes through all of these thousands of years of patriarchy and harm, that we can come out of it. We can do this. Thank you so much.
I thank you, Genevieve. You invited me here and you supported my work. And I think, as you once said, your work and my work fit well together for new perspective, new paradigm to change the situation where we are in. I thank you too, from all my heart.
Me too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Heide, for being with us and for offering this work. It's so important, especially as we're standing on this precipice, that so many books, so little time, but when they're good books, we need to take the time to really read them and digest them and live them. So thank you for being with us. I also want to thank our tech support, Diane, and our ever vigilant questioners, Judith and Liliana, for bringing the questions to you. And for those of you whose questions did not get answered in the Q&A, I want you to be assured that we'll make sure that Heidi gets them. We always give the questions and the chat to our presenter. So Heidi will get that and be able to review the chat, since she was busy answering questions and not read along with the discussion. And of course, Genevieve and the International Feminists for a Gift Economy, and for each of you for joining us. We hope that you will join us in a week on March the 11th, celebrating International Women's Day with us with Salon number 42, The Gift of International Feminism, with Marianne Beal from the US, Angela Dolmich from Colombia, Karina Kailo from Finland, Paolo Mecchiori from Italy, Angela Miles from Canada, Maria Suarez from Costa Rica, Genevieve Vaughan from the USA, and Frida Weirden from Canada. And they're going to be giving us insights into the early feminist movement and the conferences that they both experienced and helped organize, and how that moved them forward, and hopefully inspire us to continue and to connect with one another. If you'd like to be notified of our upcoming salons and events, you can sign up at a mailing list on our website, and we welcome your questions and comments. Please write to us at maternalgifteconomy@gmail.com. Judith, I wonder if you could talk about, just say the title of your salon on March the 25th and the names of the 2 other presenters that will be with you.
The salon on March 25th is entitled Gifting in the Hebrew Bible, Role Models or Cautionary Tales. And the presenters were all 3 Kohenet Hebrew priestesses, myself, Judith Merriam, Anna Maranta, and Mickey Michaela Raver. And we'll be telling various stories from the Hebrew Bible and how they're relevant to our lives today.
Thank you, Judith. So again, Heidi, thank you so much. And for the viewers who are with us today, and for those of you who are watching this recording, please do get a copy of Heidi's book. It's a very important one. We hope to see you next week. Please just stay safe, be well, and be kind to one another. And let's change the world. May matriarchy rise. Peace, everyone. We'll see you again. Thank you so much for coming. Bye. Bye for now.
Bye.